So we're jumping into some of the warbands here. Godtear, looking at Halftusk. One of my favorite warbands, a lot of personality, a lot of flavor. I love the narrative. But as much as I want to get into the narrative of the game and get those God tiers, claim my ascension to godhood, we have to look at the tactica. We have to look at how these warbands play both individually and part of a larger group, whether you're playing 2, 3, or 4. So Halftusk is a little bit misleading because looking at the champion himself, Halftusk himself, putting the Froglotites aside for a moment, you have regeneration, which is big. You have the ability to 1-punch, 2-punch. He's a brawler. Now, he doesn't, of course, have the damage output, say, as Rangosh. I mean, he's not a slayer. Or in that movement phase, the alpha of Sneaky Pete. But being a supporting type warband, he's got some bite. So at first glance, you want to look and be aggressive with him. But then when we jump in with the Froglotites, you see that they have great movement, but they have no offensive capability. And regardless of the classification of the warbands in God tier, you are going to use your followers to block, to bolster, to buff, to support, to gang up on other champions. So you have a choice. If you're playing him in multiple warbands, do you send Halftusk off, but then what do you do with the Froglotites? You can use them as blocking units, but the challenge with using them with blocking units is if they're killed, if they're easily killed or attacked, you're going to give up a point or potentially 2 points, depending on the champion that kills the Froglotites, if it is a champion, to your opponent. So I find with Halftusk a great anchor point, especially given at the end of the phase, you get the +1 on the rankings if you have a banner planted. So he's a great camper. He's a great backfield unit. So what this means is we see in the various missions where often there'll be groups of God tiers. Putting life aside for a moment. Life is I like playing the life mission, but it's kind of the intro. And yes, as much as the tiers grow, you could use this if the tiers are growing on your side. As you place the tiers, putting them back to your deployment zone, because maybe you're going to plant a banner on the far end. But if you're doing that, that means you're losing the rounds. So it's really something. I don't want to place God tiers in life. I want you to, and you can have that bonus. I'll take the rounds for the win. But what we see with the other missions, like knowledge and putting those out, is this idea that you can plant your banner, Halftusk's banner, camp him on that God tier. So he's a champion. He hangs out on the God tier. That denies area denial 1, plant the banner. It's going to be hard if any champion moves in to claim that, because you've got regeneration and you've got 1-punch, 2-punch. And if you're camping on there, you might not be moving at all. So you have that advantage in terms of actions. The Froglotites, now this is where it gets interesting with the Froglotites. They're kind of tactical, a good complement to Rattlebone with her buffs that she throws out. But the Froglotites, they can engage and move through the God tiers. They can be on the God tiers. So what this means, think about this. If there's 3 God tiers, 2 God tiers, Halftusk on one, Froglotites on the other, area denial. That's massive. That's massive, especially if a champion comes up and is looking to plant. You utilize that huge. Now, with the area denial, it might take a round or 2 to kill Halftusk, maybe a little bit more if you're pumping the regen. They can target the Froglotites, yes, and that could potentially give up a point. But think about that trade difference. If I have a champion, let's say average scenario of champion and some followers attacking Froglotites. I have my group of 3 on a hex. Let's say at best they're going to kill 2, unless it's a special ability like Blackjaw. But Blackjaw is kind of a little bit different with how he operates. So I'm going to give up 2 points, potentially. If it's a champion, maybe 3 points, champion to killing the Froglotite. 3 points versus 4 points of a banner. And that's if they roll very, very well. The Froglotites, they're pretty evasive. They're pretty slippery. So we see Halftusk as this backfield area camper. Now, what that means, much like Shale, it's easy. The thing with God tier for me is all the warbands are awesome. They've got combos. They look amazing. I want to play them all on the visuals and the story, and I'm getting behind it. But you have to understand the tactic of how they play and how it dynamically shifts and changes, whether it's 1 warband, 2, 3, or 4, or if you're doing like a custom brawl with more. So the smaller the warbands, that's where the Slayers are most important. Halftusk being a support, he doesn't want to play in smaller warbands. He's usually my third or fourth draft pick. You want to fill out other areas with certain champions to be able to push forward. But if you have that diversity, and if you have numerous warbands, Halftusk is great for just camping, claiming, area denial, and if your opponent gets close, you already got the points for the banners, and controlling God tiers, you're going to pick up the points for also knocking out some followers, maybe knocking out a champion. If they just say, you know what, Fritz, you can have those 2 God tiers in the back. I'm not going to chain. I'm not going to grow them. Halftusk can just sit there and camp. Okay, yes, I'm not utilizing his full abilities. He's not getting up into the mix, but I'm denying you the ability to earn points by killing him. And at the same time, I'm getting guaranteed banner points every turn, either to put me ahead or at least nullify, tie, or knock out one of your banners on the table.